Hey folks, welcome to tonight's episode of the Discourse. I am so sorry we are 16 minutes late. that was my bad. That was my bad. Instead of doing some bullshit alliteration, I'm gonna just say it's a podcast. I've got my co-host, Socratic and platonic life partner here, Brandon Sutton. Say what's up, Brandon.
What's up? This is Chasey Trapman, aka the rap game Key Grip. How you doing? There's liquor in this cup.
Sip up.
And then of course we've got the young dreadhead on the controls. It's Richard. Say what's up, Rich.
Hello, people. Sorry for the delay, but we are happy to be here with you. Looking forward to getting some good discussion in, and make sure to check out the SoundCloud. There'll be more content there available, and make sure to like, share, subscribe. We appreciate it, and I'll pass it back to my man, Derek.
All right, everybody. I just want to say thanks again for joining us here on the Benjamin Dixon Show channel. Big shout out to the big bro Ben for holding it down on us right here. We're gonna just jump right into this shit today. All right, like I'm not even gonna try in front and do all this whole nice political talk show shit. We're just gonna jump into the shit. Let's start talking about DACA, right? Like let's talk about what's going on. Let's talk about what that repeal means and why, once again, the Democratic Party is on some bullshit as it pertains to DACA, and everything else just by virtue of them being Democrats. But just to, go ahead, Brandon, go ahead.
I mean, before we talk about what the Democratic Party is like, how they're responding to it, we should at least, emphasize the fact that this is Trump being, Trump, right? The DACA, the repeal of DACA, along with the Muslim ban is, honestly, it's exactly what Trump promised people he was going to do during his campaign. He was going to build a wall, which was again, a symbolic way of saying he was going to distance Americanness, the idea of white Americans from brown people, and the same. He was going to ban Muslims, and he has managed to be both, incredibly petulant and I guess he followed through, right? So we can't de-emphasize the fact that like this isn't a surprise so much as it is just incredibly awful, right? Like this is what he campaigned on. He campaigned on hurting brown people, and he's following through on that. But go ahead. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I agree with you. But so I was just going to give people just the general overview, kind of what DACA was. So DACA is the Deferred Action Program for people who were brought here, quote unquote, illegally. You guys already know how I feel about that bullshit as,
Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals.
Childhood Arrivals. So that's the actual bill, but it's deferred action for people who are brought here, quote unquote, again, illegally as children. And so what it does is allows them to get, it allows,
and I think for people under 31, but continue.
And it is for people under 31. So what it does, and a couple of the other things that it does is allows people to get work permits. They must reapply every couple of years. There's a fee to do that. And there's a whole litany of hoops that they have to jump through. But basically it says, we'll give you continuous residency in the United States as long as you follow, you jump through these hoops, you meet these requirements, and, X, Y, and Z. It's a problem that it was, that Trump undid it, period. Right. And it's a travesty that we did not just give everybody amnesty because, what the fuck? These are people, right? Like these are human beings. They're not just political talking points. They're not numbers. They're not any, like they're people. And first and foremost. And so that's what a lot of us people forget in this discussion. And that's really what we're starting to see, again, from the Democratic Party, who I mentioned earlier, because they're actually celebrating the repeal of DACA. Like right now, they're ecstatic. They have said the best thing to happen to the Democratic Party is the repeal of DACA, which is bullshit. It is bullshit.
Wait, have they?
Real lives are at stake here. People's health and safety, people who've lived here, this is their country. This is the country that they know are facing deportation to somewhere they've never, well, they have been there, obviously, but haven't been in years. They're a culture that is not, it is their culture, but again, they also are American, right? So we have to keep that in mind. Like these are American citizens. These are real human beings who are going to essentially lose everything because Donald Trump is like, I hate brown people. Like that's the long and short of it. And Democrats are applauding it. Democrats are saying this is a great thing. They're turning a tragedy into a political talking point. This is a consistent problem. You cannot play politics with people's lives. So I'm not, when we come up here and when I defend DACA, I'm not going to give you guys I'm not going to give you guys, any talking points and say, oh, look at this exemplified and, heroic person who's a dreamer and all these other things, because that's not what's important, right? Like, that's not at all what is important. Well, what is important is their people.
Well, I think that you're right, and at least that last part that you said, because I haven't been keeping up with the Democratic Party's response to Trump's promise to repeal DACA, other than the fact that Nancy Pelosi came out and said that Trump said that he would sign the DREAM Act if the Republican GOP, put in front of him. Which I think Trump would sign most things that the Republican GOP put in front of him. So it's not really a surprise. That being said, though, I have noticed that at least among certain portions of the criticisms of the DACA repeal have pointed out the fact that, oh, this is so ridiculous. Like, don't they understand how important these undocumented workers, or rather these dreamers, or just basically immigrants of all kinds, are to America? And by that they mean, how much of the economy in certain sectors require undocumented labor to function. And I think that that is a very, very problematic defense of the sanctity of human lives and the ability to stay in America, right? So I think that when you reduce, okay, well, if we get rid of these 800,000 dreamers, so that's really, people, 800,000 people who are registered under DACA since its inception, and of course DACA is an executive action that was passed partially because they simply could not pass the DREAM Act under Obama, despite having 60 Democrats in the Senate. Essentially, they came close in 2010 and passing the DREAM Act, which would have been, legislation and wouldn't have been so easily gotten rid of by Trump. But you had 5 Democrats: Kay Hagan, Mark Pryor, Ben Nelson, John Tester, and Max Baucus, and of course, Joe Manchin just abstained; he wasn't there. Who just essentially wussed out in fear of not being able to win re-election in 2012 if they helped pass the DREAM Act. But I do think, there are very problematic ways of defending DACA, and one of them is, immigrant labor makes up 10% of the economy. Don't they realize how much immigrants contribute to the fruit picking industry, and who's going to pick our avocados if we get rid of all these immigrants? That's really shitty. A really shitty way of just of defending this. Similarly, I know there is something to be said about the sort of object permanency of immigrants and undocumented workers and refugees as it comes down to your everyday average liberal American, insofar that they don't seem to value the sanctity of their lives when they're in their country, right? We don't really seem to have these conversations about why people are becoming refugees from Latin America to United States of America, and largely has to do with our brutal drug war and the fact that it has empowered cartels in certain countries. Our destabilization of various Latin American governments, which we continue to do. Venezuela is a good example of that right now. And we do have to start caring about these people's lives when they're not refugees, right? Like, we can't do the first time we care about Latin American refugees should be before they're refugees. Like, okay, well, maybe we should stop making them refugees, not when they're at our borders. But we have
Brandon,
the Democrat.
That's an American. If you're not going and doing all this interventionist wars in other countries to get whatever resources we can, as many finite fossil fuels as possible, what are we going to do, right? Like,
according to Evan McMuffin, the ex-CIA,
say Evan McMuffin.
Evan McMuffin, ex-CIA. America has never overthrown any democratically elected government. That's bullshit. Obviously, you can tell it's bullshit from the fucking CIA Wikipedia page. But it is that kind of that narrative. I think that that really does show, not the narrative of Evan McMuffin. That only shows that how little respect he has for anyone who follows him on Twitter, that he would actually tweet that nonsense. But the idea that liberals care about refugees, and which I do, right? Because we're going to have a lot of refugees if we don't solve climate change. But the fact that that liberals care about refugees only once they reach the border is, part of this, continued idea of American exceptionalism, and of course people want to come to America. America's so great. It's just like, no, people want to come to America because America is not, well, I would say it's not so unequal, but really America is constantly displacing them. And so, like, yeah, we have to have a conversation about, like, our immigration laws and Dreamers and all other stuff. We also have the conversation about our foreign policy and the ways in which it actually creates these refugees and creates these immigration crises. Like, it really is, like, we have to address this from the bottom floor up.
Right. And I mean, I agree with you 100% though, because we do have, excuse me, this like an incredibly long history of just creating refugees. And when I say incredibly long, I mean from the moment the first Europeans landed on, what is now called America, we've been creating refugees. We've been going through and systemically overthrowing, different peoples for whatever reasons, largely for resources, largely because, we can. And you see a lot of this and we do it a lot of times under the guise of we're protecting freedoms. We're trying to make sure everybody's free. And we see a lot of this, a lot of Red Scare tactics still pulled out. And we saw a lot of that, especially with the things like the CIA, not the CIA, but Chiquita Banana requesting that the CIA democratically elected government of Guatemala because they were going to nationalize their banana fields. Like, these are real things that so basically we're hired thugs. We're hired thugs. We go out and we make sure our multinational corporations have the best ability to make money, and be damned the consequences, right? Like, who gives a shit? Doing so, we displace hundreds of millions of people from their homes, and then when they try to come here, because this is the one place America's not going to attack, that's debatable, but right, like, they come here thinking, okay, well, America did this, I'm going to go to America, it has to be better in America, because we feed everybody this propaganda about, oh, America's so great, while simultaneously installing vicious, ruthless, right-wing dictators. Like, this is not something that's new. It's not something that's going to stop anytime soon. We saw it during the Obama administration with Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State in Honduras. Continue, and it's the question is, when does it stop, and when do people actually start caring, right? Like, when do we get the everyday average American to realize that, hey, these things are being done in your name, these people are being attacked, are being murdered, are being forced out of their homes, out of their countries, out of their lives, out of and when they come here to escape what we've done to them, we have the audacity to say they're ruining our economy, they're terrible people, they're violent and murderous and this, that, and the other thing, and make them jump through hoops, because why not? Like, I mean, it's a lot of bullshit, and it really, quite frankly, it pisses me all the way off.
I think taking personal responsibility for America's foreign policies is a larger task than you might have made it sound in passing, in that I mean, I myself struggled a little bit with understanding how responsible am I for America's foreign policy based off of how vociferously I argue against basically what they constantly do, and you outlined earlier, especially with the CIA interfering and installing some of the most ruthless dictators that we've seen on the planet, arming them, and then eventually overthrowing them when they stop listening to us. So a lot of the violence, particularly in the Middle East, follows that cycle, and it's though it's not unique to the Middle East. And I think by being strongly against it, that helps, but I think it's a lot harder for a lot of people. But go ahead, Brandon.
Well, I mean, that's a really fraught conversation. Like, right, how responsible is any one person for America's awful foreign policy, right? And I mean,
well, just think about how quickly we lump in together whatever, like the people of Iran with the Iranian government, or the people of North Korea with the Korean government.
Here's my thoughts on it. Like, if you don't stand up against it, like if you don't use your voice and actively say this is not acceptable, then you're complicit in that violence.
Here's my, like, it's not, here's why I conceptualize it, right? So ultimately, we live in the kind of society where our lives are so resource dependent on carbon, on other forms of minerals, on other forms of labor that simply can't be done on our shores, and we are unwilling to, I guess, pay fair wages for whatever you want to call it. And so essentially, we have a lifestyle that requires, billions of barrels of oil. We have a lifestyle that requires, coal. We have a lifestyle that requires, but large acreage of land to grow food that we can't grow ourselves. All these other things, right? And so our everyday lives are so dependent on continued imperialism and neocolonialism that, like, you know, it's hard to say you're not responsible for it, because essentially, like, you know, in order to have any viable standard of living in America, you have to consume these things. And again, it's not the same conversation. It's like, oh well, you can't, because you participate in capitalism, you can't criticize capitalism. It's more a conversation like, you know, because, you know, United States, along with its varied private interests, have made the American lifestyle, you know, whether it be transportation, education, you know, food, like subsistence in general, so dependent on its imperialist projects that simply by existing, your continued existence requires at least certain forms of imperialism. I mean, you can mitigate that, but, you know, acknowledging that, hey, you know what, because I don't go out of my way to buy locally, because I don't go out of my way to bike everywhere, because I don't go out of my way to mitigate the amount of carbon that I need, that is essentially being the result. I'm sorry, that essentially the result of, you know, global atrocities. Like, I am contributing to imperialism. That doesn't mean that, you know, I'm not the cause of it, because essentially, you know, like, I'm a cog in his wheel, but I do in fact contribute to it, and I can mitigate that and I can speak out against it. But, like, ultimately to subsist, I have to.
And it's not to, and that's not. You're right, because you're 100% right. And this goes. This mirrors the conversations that I have a lot of times with a lot of vegan friends of mine, right? Who are like, I live a cruelty-free lifestyle, but it's impossible, because the everyday products you require, your cell phone, your socks, your shoes, to run your car, all this requires cruelty on the part towards humans, right? So you live an animal cruelty-free life, and I think that's absolutely amazing if you're vegan. And I honestly don't think I could do it, but. And again, you're right. You do have to participate, but you can call out the systems that you're seeing. You can actively you can do your best to try to change these systems. You may just be a cog, but if one cog stops working, it eventually can affect the entire machine. It's that whole idea of, it just takes one person to stand up and say, this is unacceptable, and have that groundswelling of support. It's going to take a lot of grassroots movements to say, these things are not acceptable, not in our name. And so from where I'm coming from, if you're unwilling to stand up against the imperialism that is being done in your name, then you are complicit. Yes, your life will require you to use things that require the natural resources, right? So electricity in your home oftentimes is coming from natural gas or coal, and those are the results of very imperialist policies by the United States, both domestically and abroad. Go and campaign for green energy. You can also go and march against wars. You can also go and fight for basic human dignity the world over. You have a voice in this country, and if you don't use it, at least for me, that's where I draw that line. If you choose not to use your voice, if you choose to be complicit in it, in more ways than what you must to survive, because the country gives you no other choice, then we have a problem. And you need to take, so I take responsibility for my participation in imperialism. I take responsibility for the fact that I'm an American citizen and these acts are committed in my name. So what I try to do is I try to always speak out against them the moment I learn about them. I try to go and be a positive difference. They have that much effect because I'm just one person right now.
I wonder. I know, Brandon, you want to get in there. I wonder quickly that if there's some parallels between the description that we're talking about fighting imperialism and where we stand on that, and then with how racism, white supremacy, systemic injustice, those types of things within. Is there a parallel for folks that is there an aspect to white supremacy that white people are kind of obligated by social construct to participate in, and is there some sort of a scale that people fall on? Are you actively advocating against it? Do you privately recognize that it's wrong? Do you publicly declare it when asked? Or where we're in that people fall in different places depending on different struggles and different fights and how important they find them to them personally. And I think some people might have a harder time doing that with speaking globally because of the distance between how they feel, or the distance between themselves and the people that we're discussing. Once their proximity is closer, as we've mentioned before, once they're on the border, they seem to care a lot more. Is there is there a parallel there, and is there a lesson to be learned?
Well, I mean, I don't know, but I do want to switch the conversation back to something Adair said, and that in the sense that a lot of this DACA stuff, or DACA repeal and Muslim ban, it really is in line with. And I know some people might not like this, insofar that like they want to continually pretend that Trump is some kind of unique evil. And I think even Ta-Nehisi's Coates' new piece, I only read like half of it because I kind of found it a little bit meh. Reflects this, that Trump is some kind of unique evil, but really he is just the next step in a project that America has been engaging with since inception, right? Which is just like idea of like a white utopia, if not necessarily in terms of like racial demographics, but also ideology, and reflecting an ideology of white supremacy. I mean, like, essentially America has always struggled with the fundamental tension between its implicit and explicit ideals, and that being whiteness, white supremacy, capital and capitalism, and democracy. And the fact that you can't really have democracy if you're content on preserving white supremacy and capitalism. And so far, like those things are antithetical to one another. And so a lot of this boils down to, can we as a country actually, I guess that goes to what you were saying, Rich, can we as a country actually engage with the genealogy of something like the DACA repeal? And again, because really, the fact that it wasn't even a DACA to repeal it could even be repealed so easily by one craven figure, speaks to the fact that it was not a very that it was only hanging on by the good graces of whoever happened to be the president. And considering we live in a society where there's only really two options for who could be president, there was a good chance DACA would have been repealed in any case. Whether it was Ted Cruz or Donald Trump. Would Ted Cruz have been more craven about it? Maybe he's a Zodiac killer, but I guess this is just a consistent time to remind people. I think that Donald Trump is not, he's a very transparent evil, but he's not a very unique one. And except for in his, ironically, except for in his prose. And so we have to start engaging with the fact that white supremacy and preserving whiteness and racial angst has been at the heart of American politics forever, and it's always been about arguing the nuances of it and who can present it in the most palatable way and who's mastered whatever trend in racial dialogue that is popular at the moment, and that's who the winner is, not necessarily anyone presenting a truly revolutionary counter message about race. I mean, ultimately, the Democratic Party, from my as far as they're involved in this, and I guess they do share some responsibility, because they're the part in 2010 when they were voting on the Dream Act, they had the ability to pass it if it were not for their inability to come as a unified bloc. Just like with single payer health care,
Democrats stood in the way of it. The Democrats had the opportunity to pass it, which is one of the
Democrats washed out.
Yeah, if we ever got to the point where Democrats had a majority again, we already know a majority is not enough, and even 60 votes might not be enough. So you're looking at you're going to need 66 Democrats in there to hopefully pass things, because you're going to need to give away some all the time. And
Democrats wussed out because again, and the fact that Democrats, that 5 Democrats or 6 Democrats did wuss out about it at the time is reflective of the fact that racial angst does exist at the heart of politics, regardless of whether they're Democrat or Republican. Because the reason why they wussed out was because they were afraid of being primaried by people to their right for being too lenient on immigrants, on brown people essentially.
I mean, yeah, but you're right. I mean, I agree with that 100%. I think that's something that we have to really start holding Democrats accountable for. That's something that we hear all the time, right, in campaigns. Well, if we vote someone, we've got to hold their feet to the fire. But how do you do that? What does that actually look like? And one of those actions is calling them out for this kind of bullshit. It had nothing to do feasible. It had nothing to do with it being something that there wasn't the real social will for it. But it had everything to do with the fact that at their heart, senators are still acting from a place of white supremacy, that voters are still going to feel threatened. And so for them, it's that self-preservation. So whether or not, a particular Democratic senator holds racist values, hint, hint, they all do. irrelevant that it became they were spineless. These Democratic senators were absolutely spineless to not sit up here and do something when they had the opportunity that would have affected millions upon millions of people, and that they acted out of fear and that they acted out of their own political self-interest as opposed to the good of the people, in my opinion, shows just how fundamentally not only the Democratic the system is in this country that's broken, but the Democratic Party and the folks that make up that party. That if you're still going to vote for somebody who denied citizenship, legal citizenship to people because they're afraid of getting primaried,
I mean,
that's shit. That's a shitty position, and there's no real defense for it.
I mean, there is that revisionist history going on, right, where people are now like trying to pretend like DACA is Obama's legacy on immigration, like DACA is solely his legacy on immigration, and similarly, Hillary Clinton had a great legacy on immigration as well. When she was in support of sending refugee children back, like refugee children, like not immigrant children, but like actual people, children seeking refugee status, political asylum in America, because of the essentially the brutal drug war that America has going on in Latin America right now. She was in favor of sending them back because she didn't want to send she didn't want to send the wrong message that America would accept refugee children.
Yeah, she wanted to send them a message saying that yes, if your children are fleeing drug violence and certain almost
the Democratic,
we're going to kick them back out.
Democratic Party
maybe get them back to the country they came from. Maybe.
Democratic Party is always in the pursuit of like proving how tough they are to the Republican Party. It seems like they have to prove how tough they are on immigration by like overperforming some bullshit like a strategy. Like, of course, Republicans would do the same thing, but it's just like that's why we don't vote for them.
Yeah, Hillary planned on building a barrier at the wall too. Imagine something similar to the free speech barrier.
Barrier, not a wall. That was the difference. Like, but Democrats will be like, "We'll send your kids home," and then they'll just be like, "But Republicans will send your kids home with guns," and like that's supposed to make it suddenly so much worse. Like it's not already fucked up because of Democratic policy. But on that note, I do want to transition because Brandon has been begging and pleading and crying all day in our DMs about talking about Hillary Clinton, his boo, his girl, the light of his world. So let's talk about his homegirl right there.
No, I haven't. I've been asking why people think that she's gonna run again. I don't understand why. Like, I mean, I think she will, or rather, I think there's a potential for her to run again if this continues. But like, considering the reaction that people have had, not just like people on not just like Bernie Sanders supporters, like, but literally most people who I think a good number of people who were her surrogates, people who voted for her in the primary election, are like, why the hell is she going on this book tour and why is she back? And not only that, but the contents of the book, it basically just like throws shade on everybody. And again, we're still in this holding pattern of her just not taking any kind of responsibility and and really just not acknowledging her own agency in losing the election. Which, I mean, okay, there are many reasons why she lost. Some of them are sexism. Some of them are, gerrymandering. Some of them are voter suppression efforts by Republicans that I would argue the Democratic Party didn't adequately fight. But like ultimately, a lot of this is also just like, complete ineptitude on the part of her campaign staff, and that's essentially because she hires loyalists over smart people. It's like she prefers hiring loyalists. She prefers hiring people like Robbie Mook and I guess Peter Dow. I really don't know I don't know to what capacity Peter Dow actually worked for her. Like I would not be surprised if he was just a groupie. Like I've never looked into Peter Dow. I don't really know who he is. All I know about him is like things I've picked up from other on Twitter from other leftists, but from little bits and pieces. Like he was part of a Lebanese death squad as a child, and now he's married to like a black chick or something. And like he gets online and argues with people about Hillary Clinton. And like if you mention her without putting the word like Madam Secretary in front of her name, like he calls you like a sexist pig and threatens like to decapitate you or some shit. And like I don't exactly. He's very for me I think he's a mass hallucination on the part of leftists, but like I do think that there is something to be said about like most people are tired of Hillary Clinton and they just want her to go away. I'm tired of rehashing the Democratic Party, the primary and general election, but I'm tired of talking about Donald Trump. So really, talking about Hillary Clinton is even less appealing too, because like I just want the election to end, but it seems like it never is. It's never going to end.
I mean, it's not. It's not, because the Democratic Party has such a love affair with Hillary Clinton because she's emblematic, right, of everything that they really believe in and everything that they really want to do.
I don't even think.
I think a lot of people bet their career on her success.
Yeah,
and like
a lot of people did. Yeah, but at the same, but that's part of the reason why they're so.
But they're still the most powerful people in the Democratic Party, despite losing that bet. You know what I mean? Like that didn't change. Like it was.
They are, but they're not.
Yeah.
Like they are, but they're not, because they're still beholden to Hillary Clinton. So everybody in the Democratic Party at some level or another, excuse me, is beholden to Hillary Clinton's interests, beholden to what she wants to do, beholden to how she thinks the world should work. And so and Brandon hit on that. She hires a lot of yes people, right? She hires people that are going to tell her, yes, this is whatever she wants to hear. That's what she's going to hear. That's why she didn't have the ground game in the Midwest like she should have. That's why she lost the election. End of story. But if you have people constantly telling you, oh no, oh my God, you're so perfect. Oh my God, you're so perfect. No, you could never do anything wrong. No, then you're going to start to believe it. Like you get told that lie every day, like 25, 30 times a day. That's what you're going to believe. And that's also what the voting public believes. Like Hillary Clinton's people,
there was just that quote that she said that she's like, I don't understand why I'm such a lightning rod for all this angst and anger or whatever. Like,
I don't understand how I'm a fucking super predator. I don't understand how I was a super predator. I was like 3.
I'm done with Hillary Clinton. I'm honestly done with her, and I think that most people are. But I think that there is a segment of the Democratic Party that her loyalists. No, it's not very big. I refuse. I don't think it's very big. I think that they're
very big. I just think that they're still the most influential, and then the big money.
I think they're very popular, and I think the people who are who refer to her are referring to her as an alternative to Trump still. Like I think that the number of people who are actually fond of her as a person and a series of ideals and principles is incredibly narrow. And the fact that we can't get past her is an indictment of how bad Trump is. And people are again, like I said months ago, people keep rehashing the general election because for a lot of people it was the last time things made sense for them, and they're hoping that we can get back to a point, they're looking back onto a theoretical Earth 2 where Hillary Clinton's president, and they don't have to worry about anything because everything's fine and no one's fees being held to the fire. But at least we're not going through this. And I can understand that mentality, but that's still not rooted in a like of Hillary Clinton. That's rooted in a dislike of Trump. Similarly, if you're really a fan of Hillary Clinton, apart from being a cult of personality around her, which is what a lot of people who are fans of her are. Like Peter Dow the Meskovich, whoever. Who is the guy, the head of Scientology? He's the head of Scientology of the Clinton cult. But essentially, no, that's the guy who wrote it. But essentially, he's that too. He's David Meskovich. I was just watching the documentary. It is David Meskovich. I can't pronounce his name. He is that person. But even that, if it was more than a cult personality, they could simply just find someone. They could articulate her set of principles in her set of principles, her stances that they liked, and they could say, okay, well, let's find another politician who represents the exact same things we like. But no, it really is in certain ways a reductionist view of Hillary Clinton, or not really reduction. They've deified her. And people who do like her deified her, and people who are sort of the people who deified her, people who are just looking to her because again she was the last chance we had to not have Trump. But again, like I said, the number of people who actually like her, the deifying group, who okay, in 2020 we want her to run again, is very, very. I can't believe that's that's a lot of people. People say 65 million people voted for her, but I would say maybe that's 10 million people who actually want her to run again.
I would disagree. I would say a large segment of the Democrats, of registered Democrats, really, truly amazing fantasy about who Hillary Clinton is and what her policies are. Her policies are incredibly destructive, especially to poor people and communities of color, and then obviously the global South and countries of color come from. We've seen this. This is real. But Richard is in part right in that he said, yeah, a lot of the people that do support her have the money, have the power, are, you know, the upper echelon of the party. But at the same time, your rank and file Dem doesn't really pay much attention. Media doesn't, well, they pay a lot of attention. They pay attention to some media. They don't pay attention to the reality of what's going on, right? They don't pay attention to what her actual policies are. They don't put two and two together when they say, oh yeah, this happened in Honduras, this State Department backed coup, which, you know, happened during the Obama era when Secretary Clinton was the Secretary of State at the time. But they don't put two and two together. They just say like, oh yeah, random government stuff, whatever. But I like Hillary Clinton because this is what I've been told. This is what I've been told I should like. This is who I've been told I should like. And so a lot of them also really feel like she was robbed. They feel like she was robbed out of this election. In part, I do think that the Electoral College needs to go. It should just be the popular vote. I agree with that. But a lot of them are so high on this Russian narrative that somehow the Russians came in and hacked all of this stuff and made Trump president, and he's not the legitimate president. It should be Hillary Clinton. And that right there is enough to spin a mass of people to say, now she needs to run again. She was robbed last time. Like it's almost like this really shitty Rocky 2 backstory. Like that's what it feels like. It's really, we're getting Rocky. Like it feels like we're getting Rocky 2, and I don't like it. I don't like.
I think you're Rocky 3. Rocky 3 was Russia.
Rocky 3, yeah, thank you.
No, Rocky 3 was Clubber Lang. Rocky 4 was Russia. Jesus, we're both wrong. But
I'm not thinking about the Russian, like, who beat him out. Just just never mind. Well, those who got it. Those who didn't. It's okay.
I mean, there's a lot of Rockies. One is about Russia. One is about a comeback versus Apollo Creed. It's not important. The important part is that I think Dem tribalists vote for anybody. So the fact that Dem tribalists like Hillary Clinton is irrelevant to me because they would vote for anybody. They like whoever's put in front of them. I'm talking about like Hillary Clinton tribalists. And ultimately, like those are the people who I think Richard hits on the head. Like they stake their careers on her, and they're afraid of Bernie Sanders, and like I think there is a war being fought right now for the soul of the Democratic Party. You know, between the people who are tired of the establishment because they're not only are they ineffective at what they want at what people want to be done, like what the Democratic Party wants. I mean, what people progressives want done. But they're also losers. Like they lost the most unpopular presidential candidate in history, which only God knows what that makes you. And now they're like Clinton is their way of, rehashing as their way of holding on to power. But but in all these situations, Clinton's a pawn. She's a pawn for like people's varied interests. Like she's someone's meal ticket. She's someone she's someone's ticket to power. She's someone's she's someone's supplanted ego. She's someone's X. She's someone's Y. But no one is saying like, here are the Clinton policies that I like, and maybe we can find somebody who has those exact same policies. And this is the way to move forward. I would say that there's a similar section of the Bernie Sanders supporters who are not saying here are Bernie Sanders policies. Maybe we can find someone who has the exact same policies, or at least reports that the exact same policies, so we can get going in 2020. Like there is, like I said on Twitter, and there's a non-zero chance that we're going to see, 2020 going to be exactly like 2016, except everyone's going to be older and more jaded, and that's not going to be attractive for anybody. Like there's a good chance that it's going to be okay. Well, Bernie's going to be involved in some way, Clinton's going to be involved in some way, and Trump is going to be involved in some way, and we're going to have a Rocky 2. You're right. We're going to have a Rocky 2 insofar it's going to be everyone's going to get their asses kicked by like it's going to come at you fast.
Yeah, you're right in that all three are going to be involved again. You're going to have Trump, who's obviously going to be running for re-election. I think Bernie's involvement is going to be, he's going to be the guy in the corner. He's going to be your coach. He's going to be trying to tell whatever new upstart challenger who either runs as an independent or as a Democrat. I mean, here's what you do. Here's the weaknesses. You want to do this, do that, do the blah 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 blah. Like that's going to be his job.
Well, Bernie, when he first ran, he said the only reason he would run, when people first started asking the question, is like, the only reason I'm going to run is if there's basically not a progressive candidate out there. And so if there's a progressive candidate out there, he will likely just support them. That's his most likely position. If there isn't, then I don't see how he could convince himself he's not responsible to run again.
I mean, he could convince himself because there could be somebody that he likes, and I think that's what it's going to be, because I don't think Bernie is going to be this, I'm going to run again. I don't think he's going to turn into Hillary Clinton in that sense.
Yeah, he didn't want to be president. He was doing it as he had to do it. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
You're good. Like, we'll see her run to the end of time, but I don't think we'll see Bernie do. I think Bernie will instead start grooming a young kind of surrogate who's going to be kind of like Bernie 2.0, who's going to have those same ideas, but is going to be younger than he is, because that was one of the main knocks on his campaign, is that he was old, right? That he was
all the same age.
Yeah, but hopefully a more
and that's the difference.
like not that he didn't do his job, but a more diverse background, so that he understands better how to articulate and how to get across to the people that he had a hard time explaining why his policies were the best option that they have. But continue there.
I mean, so yeah, but basically, so he's gonna have his little young, whatever protege coming up. They're gonna run. Hillary Clinton, I think, is the interesting one.
I don't. You're the only one who's ever said that in the entire history of the fucking universe.
You don't that Hillary Clinton's interesting, or that Bernie's gonna have a surrogate?
That Hillary Clinton's the interesting one. Like that sentence has never been uttered. And like that's sometimes you hear sentences never been uttered by anyone.
Hillary's the interesting one because of the way things could go. Because there's two options. She can either say I was robbed in 2016, rule the election, and I'm going to run again, and she's going to get major applause from the Democratic establishment crowd. Or she can Emperor Palpatine it. She can pull the Emperor Palpatine. She can be behind the scenes. She can find her young neoliberal and pit them against Bernie Sanders. So no matter what we do, we're going to have a rehashing of the 2016 election cycle, because the Democratic candidates from 2016 are now going to be the coaches in 2020. So you're either going to see a Kamala Harris or a Cory Booker coming out of the Democratic Party with Hillary Clinton behind them. And you can already see kind of the messaging that the Democratic establishment is going to go with. They're going to be like, they're young. They're here to change America. And look at who their coach is. It's Hillary. Like that, they're going to build up like it's LeBron in the Miami Heat, right? Like they're going to build up as this kind of super team. Don't vote for them, or if you campaign against them, or you say I don't like them for whatever reason, we've already started to see the kind of attacks that you're going to face. If you say anything about Cory Booker and you're not black, you're a racist. End of story. If you say anything about Kamala Harris and you're not black, you're a racist. If you're a man, you're a sexist.
I'm darker than Cory Booker. I should be less ignorant when I went about him.
Cory Booker is horrible. Cory Booker is absolutely the worst thing.
No one likes Cory Booker either. That's the thing. These people no one really like.
Right, that's Cory. Can I?
No, we have.
I'm gonna apologize. I'm gonna apologize to Ben after I said Cory Booker's a house nigga. Like, let's call it what it is. Let's call him what he is. He is he's the butler out of Django. That brother does not care about y'all, and that's what I have this issue with. Right? Is they gatekeep blackness as who's most willing to capitulate to the status quo, who's most willing to capitulate to white supremacy, who's going to continue the issues that we've been seeing, especially as it pertains to the African American community. Because guess what, folks? Had Cory Booker had a spine and decided like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna campaign for Medicare for all, and I'm gonna allow, because we had the earlier bill by Bernie Sanders. Which I just got a text and I'm dying. The person who sent it knows why I'm laughing. But anyways,
we have to go.
No,
we have to go. Sign out.
Shut up. Oh, we do have to go. All right. Anyways, sorry, folks. The show was terrible tonight. We did it last minute. That's my fault. I take responsibility. I had a very important discussion I needed to take care of. Yes, I did. I really need to take care of that. I'm sorry, folks. We're gonna be better. Check out the podcast on SoundCloud, and Brandon sucks.